and then join the call with Cory. Cory, you there?
I am here. Hello, Ben.
All right. Everyone, say hello to Cory Novotny, the host of He's Done It podcast, a mostly sports podcast. Cory, welcome to the Affable Chat live stream.
Thank you for having me on. Hello, chat. I am very excited to chat with Ben and chat with you guys about some football today.
Yes, and actually, Cory, I've done this a little bit out of order. I'm actually going to switch back over to my desktop view because there's the topic. The reason I want to talk to you tonight, Cory, is because we want to get to the bottom of an interesting discussion. TJ, I don't actually have I do use Discord, but I haven't set up a Discord server for the Twitch yet. But keep your eyes and ears peeled because that is something I want to get set up. But the reason I've got you here today, Cory, is because I want to get to the bottom of a quintessential discussion about the 2016 draft class, which is the one that had Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott in it. And just to kickstart that conversation, we're going to watch a video from Sports Science. So I'm actually going to leave the call so I can play that, and then I'll be right back to talk to you, all right?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, cool. So let's switch us over back to here. Do you guys remember Sports Science? They like to take sports and get real down to the numbers. I found the perfect video for what we're discussing tonight, where they talk about Derrick Henry versus Ezekiel Elliott. So let's check this out.
Entering the ESPN Sports Science Lab are two of the most productive players in all of college football. Ohio State's Ezekiel Elliott and Alabama's Derrick Henry. At 6 foot 225 pounds, Elliott has the frame of a top 10 rusher in today's NFL. And compared to Henry, who's 3 inches taller, Elliott has an estimated center of mass about 11% lower. Biomechanically, this helps Elliott stay balanced when changing directions 3 times in less than 2 seconds. And when rotating on spin moves as quickly as NFL All-Pro, LaShawn McCoy. But that balance can also help when waiting for a running lane to develop. In our pitch and pop test, Elliott identifies an open lane in about as much time as it takes to snap your fingers. And because he keeps his backfield strides short, Elliott is able to plant his foot just 0.16 of a second after spotting the hole. This allows him to perfectly time a jump cut that takes less than 0.2 of a second to complete. That's as fast as moves we've measured in the lab by Adrian Peterson. While the Heisman winner's cuts aren't as quick, his game is suited for a slightly different style of running. In our acceleration test, Henry didn't just finish with the fastest time for running backs this year. Over 20 yards, he actually had the best time of any offensive player we analyzed in this draft. And he couples that quickness with a bigger frame than the average NFL linebacker. This is why, in our game changer test, he was able to plow through 1,500 pounds of heavy bags, or more than the combined weight of the Broncos' front 5, in less than 1.4 seconds. That's 27% faster than any running back we've tested in the last 4 drafts. This combination of speed and power means when Henry gets in the open field, he can build up the same momentum as a wrecking ball swinging at about 5 miles per hour, which for a defender can look like this. After putting both backs
folded that
through
thing
our
in
metric,
half.
Elliott's ceiling projects to Marshawn Lynch, and we believe Henry could be a hybrid Eddie George.
And he even went to the Titans.
Now, both of these backs excelled here in the lab, but one area Henry clearly dominated was his acceleration. Over the first 5 yards in an all-out sprint, Henry had the fastest time of any player in any position that we tested in the last 3 drafts. For ESPN Sports Science, I'm John Brinkus.
I love John Brinkus, dude. All right, I'm going to get Cory back in here. Cory, are you there? I
am
Oh, there
here.
you are. All right. So how about that, dude? Remember John Brinkus in Sports Science on ESPN?
I missed Sports Science. That was definitely my first thought there. I'm not sure why they went away with that. I was actually a little surprised that they had a Sports Science video just 4 years ago, because it feels like this was much longer ago.
Well, I want to. Parker actually put a really good comment while we were watching that. He said, the year Derrick Henry won the Heisman, Zeke, Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, and Christian McCaffrey all somehow had better rushing averages. Derrick just had like 80 billion touchdowns, and that's why that's what really brought me to this brought me to this point where I wanted to talk to a sports expert like Cory about this, because Derrick Henry was not seen as the premier running back in the 2016 draft class. It was Ezekiel Elliott. And why do you feel like that was, Cory? Can you encapsulate why people saw him as the better running back?
I think the way that I would look at it with guys like Ezekiel Elliott and guys mentioned in here like Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey is that they all are a little more versatile as running backs than Derrick Henry. Not to say that Derrick Henry isn't still somewhat of a threat out of the backfield catching the ball, but his biggest thing was always being that big bruising power running back. And in today's NFL offense, teams are much more pass happy. You have very few teams that run the ball more often than they throw the ball. And because of that, running backs that can contribute to the passing game, be on the field in all 3 downs, are kind of seen as higher ceiling guys who can make bigger impact to an entire offense. And
yeah,
I think that's the big reason why Derrick Henry fell all the way to the second round, even though he won the Heisman Trophy. He won, I don't want to say he won, but he scored a ton of touchdowns. I don't know what the actual total is. I think we're going to look at some of the stats.
Probably slightly less than 80 billion,
yes,
but he was scoring a lot. And it's important to recognize the difference between college ball and pro ball. I think one of the things that helped Derrick Henry dominate, like they mentioned in the video, he has this gigantic frame. In college, he was trampling guys because there's a lot of guys in college who will never play the pros just based on their genetics. They're not big enough to, or they're not the athletic freaks that are so commonly found in the NFL. So I think that a lot of people also said that probably won't be as much of an impact there. Being big still matters, but he won't be able to just truck through the entire defense the way he could when he was running the ball for Alabama.
Size difference is definitely like a big deal, because Alabama has NFL talent on their side of the field, but oftentimes they'll face teams that maybe don't have as much NFL talent. So it's tough to say, okay, yeah, he's able to score touchdowns, run over defenders who are going to be selling cars in 2 years, makes him the best running back versus guys that maybe have the actual athletic skill set. It's why you see guys like, looking at today's draft class, totally different position, but quarterback. Kyle Trask is a guy who put up amazing numbers at Florida. Like his extrapolate them, they compare to Joe Burrow's numbers last year. But Kyle Trask is not viewed in the same light as guys like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields as a top guy, because he doesn't have like that natural skill set. So not to say that Kyle Trask can't be a great quarterback. He can't be someone who can be a first-round pick, but it's like I think everyone recognizes the difference between the college game and the NFL. That's why Tim Tebow is the greatest college football player of all time and why he's playing AAA baseball now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Parker makes another good point with like saying that Alabama's offensive line was really dominant that year, and there was a good chance he might not have that at his disposal in the pros. It's interesting just to look at the history of Alabama running backs, because it seems like there's such, especially this year, there were so many dominant Alabama running backs in the NFL, like former Alabama running backs. But you have like the one big exception in Trent Richardson, which I think we all remember as being really disappointing. Alabama.
Yeah, he's definitely the poster child of why you don't draft a running back in the top 5.
Yeah,
which is I guess an interesting segue into Ezekiel Elliott, who was drafted in the top 5.
number 4.
Number 4 overall. Yep.
Yes. While Derrick Henry, of course, like you said earlier, was a second rounder. And I especially have like an emotional tie into this because at the time my roommate and I, big NFL fans, were arguing over what this was. And conventional wisdom was that Ezekiel Elliott was going to be far more valuable than Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry probably wasn't even going to be a first rounder. Like that was all kind of known. But the way that he played, especially against Clemson, so I think that probably was what pushed me over the line.
Yeah.
Was that I wanted to see him succeed. And ever since then, I've been a big Derrick Henry fan, and it's been great to see how well he's done, especially lately. So I'm actually going to jump us over to this screen over here, which has – this is from StatHead, which is apparently like a stat aggregate website, affiliate of what do they call that? Pro Football Reference.
Yeah,
which is a great
like
website.
Colors.
Yes, and so there's a couple things here. I don't know. We might have to jump over to just Pro Football Reference to get like the detailed stats, but I do kind of want to look at these comparison stats overall because one of the things that they have on actually before we get into the stats, I would say which one right now would you say is having the better career without taking a close look at the numbers? Who would you say has been the more valuable running back, Ezekiel Elliott or Derrick Henry? At this point.
This is a tough one because I think recency bias leans toward Derrick Henry because Ezekiel Elliott had a really bad season in 2019 compared to what he has been doing, while Derrick Henry just continues to run over everybody in his path. He's done that for the past couple seasons. All that being said, I think the start of Ezekiel Elliott's career was so much better than Derrick Henry's that he still has a slight edge over Henry. But it is, Henry's closed that gap so much compared to where it was in like 2017 or even 2018.
Now, I know Derrick Henry just won his second consecutive rushing title. Does Ezekiel Elliott have any rushing titles? I think he does.
Off the top of my head, I don't know that, but I would be surprised if he didn't win it. I know 2017 he was suspended for 6 games, but even, 2016 or 2018.
It does say
very much up there.
2018 was definitely Ezekiel Elliott.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, you're on the money, Cory. 2016 and 2018 Ezekiel Elliott rushing title. So now they're tied for rushing title.
Yes.
Parker is asking a question in the chat. Would y'all agree that running backs are the most disposable position on an NFL team besides kicker/punter? If you take away all like the tertiary positions, like gunner on the punting team, I don't know if disposable is the right word. I just feel like least worthy of your money is probably where I would put it.
I think replaceable is maybe a better way to say disposable. Like you wouldn't necessarily just throw them in the trash, but if a guy wants $12 million and you can get someone for $1.2 million, then you're going to take the guy who's $1.2 million over the $12 million guy, even if there's like a little bit of a talent drop, just because the reality is the running back position depends so much on offensive line and great blocking. And as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I can tell you that because the Steelers had amazing offensive line and run blocking in 2017 with Le'Veon Bell. In 2018, James Conner comes in. It's like, oh, doesn't matter who's there. And now the run blocking sucks, and James Conner and Benny Snell and whoever's back there can even run for 100 yards if they really handed the ball off 50 times. So it's very much a big factor in that case. I think that's a reason why it's so replaceable.
It's a little bit paradoxical because you look at teams like Tennessee, you look at teams like Minnesota, and even the Cowboys when Zeke's having a good year, and you say like nobody else could do this. They're leaning so hard on this running back, like this guy is the team. But then you look at somebody like the 49ers, for example, or the Rams, where it's more of a system, and you just need guys who fit a specific skill set, and you can find plenty of guys who have that skill set, and paying any of them a lot of money doesn't really make sense. Like the most high-paid running backs in the 49ers backfield the last few years have been Jet McKinnon and Coleman, not Justin Coleman, but Tevin Coleman. And they have been two of the least productive running backs in that system. It's really frustrating because running backs run so hard, they get beat up so much. But I just feel like at this point, it's just clear that they're not worth overpaying.
No, and it's unfortunate because all of these guys put up fantastic numbers when they're barely making any money, and then when it comes time to pay them, that's when it becomes a bad deal because they just have too much wear and tear on their bodies. And like, it's not even just the NFL; it goes all the way back to college, high school. Like they've run the ball thousands of times at this point. They've taken so many hits, and there's just a lot of wear and tear that comes along with that.
It's so true. And Parker makes a good point. I think the exception are the APB. What does APB stand for? APB style guys like McCaffrey.
Yeah,
they
I don't
can.
recognize
Well,
that one.
I'm not sure exactly what the acronym stands for, but I think I get what he's like going for. Like,
yeah, and I had
because-
always all-purpose
ahead.
back, all-purpose.
Ah,
back.
right, of
Yep.
course.
Yep. I had agreed with that statement going into the season. I thought Christian McCaffrey was, if anyone, the one guy that you pay, and of course he gets hurt and he only plays in 3 games. That's one thing you say about staying healthy, and that's an important part of the
That's
running
a
back
tough
position
one.
as well.
That's a
Yep.
tough one with football, though. You know, it's the
Oh, I
type of thing
know.
where it's like, was Jimmy Garoppolo really worth all that money we paid him this year? And it's like, well, he barely played.
Yeah, when you're just
yeah.
sitting on IR, you're not worth anything. But it's another thing, the nature of the position and why you don't want to overpay guys because, you know, whether it's the wheels fall off and they don't play well or the wheels fall off and they can't stay healthy, it's the same thing.
Right. So, all right. Well, before we jump into the more statistical part of this conversation, I did just want to throw it back to sports science really quick. These guys, like, sports science was so much fun. This one was more of like a truly science-based one. Like, they talked about like center of mass and like they did point out Derrick Henry's like insane acceleration abilities, which nobody that big should be able to accelerate like that. But it was still Gabriel. I see you eating chips in the chat. Nobody should be able to accelerate like that, especially not guys as big as Henry. So I think that was insightful. I don't think that was something I truly appreciated just looking at this draft. And they also, but some of the things I loved about sports science is when they would do ridiculous stuff like They said that these bags that Derrick Henry is able to just run in between weigh more than the whole Denver Broncos defensive line. Like that's real science. Like the Denver Broncos defensive line just stands in a huddle together, and the running backs have to just like topple them over. I remember watching one where Marshawn Lynch has to truck through a door. They were saying that Marshawn Lynch delivers the same power as this battering ram. And they showed like a guy in like SWAT armor breaking down a door. And then they got Marshawn Lynch to do the same thing. And then they had the one for Vernon Davis. Like he has so much torque when he pulls that like it can yank like a full grown man like 10 yards or something. And they got, what's his name? The host of it.
John Barankis.
Yeah, John Barankis to like hold on to a cord behind Vernon Davis and get like yanked really far. That's the kind of science I'm interested in as a sports fan. So yeah, I definitely miss sports science.
Yeah, they had a ton of good ones back in the day. Like it seemed like every night or at least once a week there was a different sports science episode on Sports Center. So definitely disappointing that they don't do these anymore because you do get to like really learn a lot about what actually goes into these guys being such freak athletes,
or at least feel like you're learning.
Yeah, you're right.
But okay, so here's one of the things that this website, this StatHeads website has. They have this approximate value statistic, which I thought was interesting that they included that. But it says approximate value is our attempt to attach a single number to every player since 1960. See the glossary for more information. And this probably is somewhere in the realm of like, QBR, quarterback rating, one of these things where they try to mathematically spell out how valuable you are.
Yeah.
And while that can be helpful, I don't like it as like an end all be all.
No, I agree with that. I think that a lot of sports try to mimic stats based on what you have in baseball because baseball has a lot of advanced analytics like this. Their stat is wins above replacement, which basically says that a player is worth this much more than a replacement level player or this much less than, and that's a way to determine how great a player is. And I think that the approximate value is kind of supposed to be like that, where you're just putting it kind of on an average or so. I don't know how this one goes because They're both positive. I don't know if you can have a negative approximate value, but
I don't think
52
so.
is much. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. 52. Actually, yeah. What am I saying? Maybe there could be a negative value
It
for
feels
much
like
worse
52
players.
is much higher than 29.
Yeah.
I don't know how high it can go. I don't know if we look at some like quarterback numbers and they'd be like 200. But regardless, it tells you that Ezekiel Elliott is deemed to be almost twice as valuable as Derrick Henry.
Which when you like you put it earlier, his inclusion in the passing game, I think, is a big part of that. I do want to point out that Joey said that that sports science has been replaced by sports pseudoscience now. He says more and more people are getting their sports information from Sports 8chan and OANN Sports. That's hilarious. This is my favorite stream yet. I'm proud of Joey for hanging in this long talking about sports. Yes, Joey is famously not a sports weeb, but we do, we like to be multifaceted here at Affable Chat. But okay, so another thing that this lets us, what's up, Justin? But right here in the as we continue with these stats, games played, Derrick Henry actually outpacing Zeke by 8 games, even though I'm pretty sure, 7 games. I'm pretty sure overall touches, there may be more for I'm not gonna looking at too many stats at once right now.
It does say rush attempts, Elliott 1,400 to Derrick Henry 1,000.
Yes. So Zeke's usage rate is higher. Let's not pass on the fact that Derrick Henry does have 2 completions out of 3
attempts.
I
did see that. He's the better quarterback. That's what
very,
that tells me.
Very impressive there. He is the better quarterback. Although,
hey, I was saying that Ezekiel Elliott is the more versatile, but this tells me that I was wrong. Derrick Henry can do it in all 3 facets of the offense.
Well, he does. Now, here's the thing. Derrick Henry has 14 yards on 3 attempts in the regular season, but if you look down here at playoffs totals, 1 for 1, 3 yards, 1 touchdown. And I'm sure you can remember this play, Cory.
I do remember that. Was it against the Ravens last year?
It was the Tebow hop.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
They act like they were going power up the middle. They hand it off to Henry. He runs it and then just jumps straight in the air and just tosses a Tebow kind of rainbow pass over the top to I don't remember who he threw it to, but there was a passing touchdown in that big upset against the Ravens, which, of course, we get to see that rematch coming up this weekend in the playoffs.
Yes, that is definitely one of the more exciting matchups of this coming weekend.
So even though small sample size, we'll say Zeke is the better receiving back, but Henry is the better passer.
Yes. Yes, I think it's difficult to look at those numbers and argue otherwise.
But okay, let's keep going with these regular season stats, because I think it's important to consider both sets of stats. Now, what does this stand for? Yards gained per attempt. Okay, so those are still passing stats. So rushing attempts, Zeke is definitely outpacing him per game as well as in total yards. He's got 500 more, just about. But
a little over 500 more rushing yards.
But Henry, just like in college, is leading the way on those touchdowns.
Yes, he's well ahead on the touchdowns. And yards per attempt.
And yards per attempt, and also the longest.
Yes.
And this is another reason that adds to, it's one of those deceiving statistics or something where, you can, might be tempted to overvalue it, but that 99-yard run against the Jaguars was legendary. That was the one that goes down in history as one of the greatest I've ever seen. With all the
that's
stiff
not
arms
only a legendary run in general, but I think that was the moment that led to Derrick Henry's breakout, because before that he looked like a bust. Like, there were talks that the Titans were going to trade him at the deadline in October that year, and he breaks off that 99-yard touchdown run against the Jaguars, and I think after that we started to see Henry just become more and more dominant. And now it's to the point where he's in this conversation with Ezekiel Elliott, and before that play he definitely was not. So,
and as a heavy Derrick Henry investor in the past, at least, I was always frustrated with his lack of usage. Even when I was on He's Done It, talking to you about Derrick Henry,
Yep.
my
I
mantra was
definitely
always,
remember that.
yeah, my mantra was always give this man the ball. You will see good things happen if you give him the ball. But instead, they wanted to split carries with Dion Lewis.
Yeah, I know. I I remember you saying that. I thought it was crazy just because like the Titans weren't using him, and I just kind of assumed that Henry's not a great running back. There's a reason he's not involved in their game plan because they had DeMarco Murray who retired, and it was like, all
Yes.
right, finally time for Derrick Henry, and then they go out and sign Dion Lewis away from the Patriots. And it's like, oh, never mind. I guess Henry is not the guy, and he
And
finally got those chances down the stretch there.
oh man, DeMarco Murray was so good with the Titans at the end of his career. I loved watching him. But now let's push beyond rushing into receiving, and like you said before, very much advantage Zeke here, and
Yes.
it's it's very apparent who gets the usage here. In every stat, Zeke leads except for yards per reception, but I think that may have something to do with sample size.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Henry's numbers are as high as they are because I feel like most of that has been in the past couple seasons. But I mean, that being said, even if you had just 76 catches over 2 years, 38 in one season, you can look at Ezekiel Elliott's over 5 seasons. He's averaging 50 catches a season. So I think that just kind of shows that Zeke is very much more of a receiving threat and a guy that the Cowboys like to basketball to compared to Derrick Henry in his situation with Tennessee.
It's definitely true. Gabriel, I do want to shout out my brother is in the chat right now, pointing out my attire. Like I showed it off at the beginning, I am wearing a football Hawaiian shirt with referees, footballs, football pads, and helmets on it, as well as a shirt that says football really big. And Gabriel, yeah, I love it. I'm glad that it says football is larger than the 49ers logo or the word 49ers. So, yeah, it's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. I didn't even know I wanted, but you got it for me, and I appreciate that. Okay, now let's look at these per game stats. And this, I think this will paint a clearer picture of, usage most apparently. Because, again, Zeke leading the way here with slightly more touches per game. And I think, honestly, this comes from Derrick Henry's underutilization early in his career.
Yeah, I would say that's very much it because Henry, he's had so many games where he's getting 25, 30 carries. So I think that's the reason why that number is 15. Not necessarily to say that Zeke's 20 attempts per game is a ton. Like that's a fairly standard amount for a really good running back in today's
Right.
game. The 15 is very low for Henry.
Definitely. There's a lot of times where he wasn't well utilized, in my opinion, like I said. And but Derrick Henry, even with less carries, slightly higher touchdowns per game. And I mean, one carry or one reception per game. I think we got it that Derrick Henry's not involved in the passing game, and Zeke very much is.
Yes. I think those receiving numbers really do tell the story when you just talk about the difference between these two guys. Is the difference that we said in 2016 when they were drafted, and that's certainly held true in the first 5 years of their career.
All right, and now we'll take a look at the playoffs to see where these guys are in the clutch because both of them have experience in the playoffs. 3 games for Zeke and 5 games for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry will be adding to that total this weekend. Ezekiel Elliott will not.
No, that is incredible that even if Tennessee loses, Derrick Henry will have played in twice as many games as Ezekiel Elliott with the Cowboys. It does not feel like the tight end should be a playoff team every year and the Cowboys should not. So
yeah,
especially I mean with Zeke's talent, like how good that offense can be, and there's a point where Henry was almost phased out of Tennessee early in his career. So
yeah, I know. It
I
would
don't
have been
think that's
such a
anything
shame.
anyone would have predicted. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Nick? I like football too. Okay, so we already went over Derrick Henry's elite passing in the playoffs. But
can I just point out one thing real quickly? So,
Yes.
so Nick's his username, I don't know if it's like it in every chat, but on mine it's in like an orange color, and like quick glance it looks like it says Nickelodeon. And I think that's fun. There is a NFL game on Nickelodeon, so if you're sitting through this, you're probably a football fan. But like if you're not really a football fan, you're just a Ben fan, and you love SpongeBob and Patrick, you want to watch them celebrate touchdowns. The Saints and the Bears are playing a game on Nickelodeon Sunday at 4:40 p.m. Eastern time.
I just think that's so funny. What makes that one special, Corey? What are they going to do in that game?
There's going to be slime in the end zone. They're going to have googly eyes on players' faces. Like it's going to be awesome. I think it'll be a ton of fun. Definitely have your kids watch football with you for 3 hours and hope that they like it enough that they'll watch the real stuff every other game.
Oh, that's so
SpongeBob
funny.
probably won't be on it too often.
Oh man. But okay, let's keep it going with the playoff stats. I mean, at this point, I think attempts is like we said, Derrick Henry is probably going to have about twice as many stats or attempts because he's played that many more games.
Yeah.
Although I'm trying to remember, have the Cowboys won a playoff game in?
They did. They beat the Seahawks in 2018.
Okay.
That was in the wild card round. Because in 2016 they were the number 1 overall seed in the NFC and they lost to the Packers in the divisional round.
So, Zeke's got 2 touchdowns. Derrick's got 3. Honestly, I mean, it's not that hard to do the math, but I almost want to just jump down to the playoff per game stats and look at that a little bit more because both of them averaging in the 20s for attempts in the playoffs. So their teams trust them to be a big part of the offense in the postseason, which is is important because that not only is that something that can quickly be abandoned in a desperate situation, but on top of that, teams that can run the ball in the postseason and play defense is like a tried and true formula for postseason success.
Yeah, and I think the case with the Titans and Derrick Henry is they not only trusted Derrick Henry to maintain a strong workload, but they abandoned the passing game, if anything, before the running game. So I think it's a big reason why Henry's numbers are big per game because I can't imagine he was used very much in their 2017 playoff game against the Chiefs. That was when DeMarco Murray was still in the fold and before Henry really got his opportunities. So that's that game's probably deflating his numbers.
Right, definitely. And I mean, receiving game, now we're going against the narrative a little bit where they're both basically the same per game. But again, small sample size. I'm not going to put too much stock in that. So, Cory, we made it through all the comparison stats. How do you feel now? Do you feel like there's one that's separating from the other? Or how do you feel? Who's the better football player right now?
I think that if you look at the entirety of their 5 years careers, just looking at those stats, the rushing numbers are similar. The receiving numbers do go into Ezekiel Elliott's favor. So for that reason, I still do lean towards Zeke, but Henry's closing in fast. And I don't know how much longer we can say that Zeke would be ahead of Henry, assuming that Henry can keep up this pace. Just given, like we said, all the carries he receives, it's figured that it's going to be sooner than later before they start to catch up to him. And maybe Zeke can outlast Henry because he maybe doesn't have that same kind of dependability that he had because 2019 he was not as prominent. So
yeah, no, and I'm excited. I'm glad we had this. Yeah. I in this past season.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we had this conversation right now because I think we're at a pivotal time in this like rivalry, if you can even consider it that, of like these two prominent 2016 running backs. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here and to eventually one day look back at this once they're both retired and be able to have a definitive discussion on this. But I think this was productive, Cory. Thanks so much for coming onto the stream and talking some football.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always fun talking football with you.
Well, where else can people hear you talk football, Cory?
They can also hear me talk football and you talk football on He's Done It podcast. It is a mostly sports podcast. We did have Ben come on as a special guest host. We had you on back in September to preview the NFL season. We definitely had some strong takes in that one. We look back on those at the start of the episode before kind of talking about just the whole playoff picture in general, some of the teams that we think are big threats to the top seeds, some sleepers, everything like guys that are under the most pressure to succeed. And of course, we give our wild card weekend predictions. So even though Ben probably won't be on it again for at least a little while, my co-host Brian Wells and I will continue to put out a new NFL episode every single week throughout the remainder of the postseason.
Yep, and I consider myself a sports weeb. I love me some sports, but these guys, Brian and Cory, they really know what they're talking about. So check out He's Done It, a mostly sports podcast, wherever you find your podcasts. Cory, once again, thank you so much for coming on Affable Chat. I will talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, how about that, you guys? That was fun. I love talking to Cory. You guys may have noticed we have a little bit of chemistry. Cory and I have done countless podcasts together. He's even been on the Affable Chat podcast a couple of times. We did Dodgeball. We did an episode where we reviewed Dodgeball, as well as a couple off-script episodes with him as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you want, I'm telling you, it's a comprehensive episode. If you want to get ready for the playoffs this weekend, go check out He's Done It podcast. It'll have just about everything you need to get ready for that. So I am so switching gears.